Bonsoir à toutes et à tous et bienvenue à cette première conférence de l'année. Venice Architecture Belgium et Bozar continuent de coproduire un vaste programme culturel composé de conférences, de débats et d'expositions dédiées à l'architecture ici au Palais des Beaux-Arts. Ce soir, nous avons le plaisir d'accueillir Gilles Delalex et Yves Moreau du bureau Muoto qu'ils ont fondé en 2003 à Paris. Avant de leur donner la parole, je tiens à vous présenter ma collègue Hélène de Hulu, rédactrice en chef de la revue A+, qui est avec nous ce soir pour nous en présenter le premier numéro de sa nouvelle édition, le A+ 311 Circular Plans.
Goedenavond en ook welkom van mijnentwege. Het is inderdaad met heel veel plezier en heel veel trots dat ik jullie het gloednieuwe nummer van A+ kan voorstellen. A+ 311 Circular Plans. Vanaf vandaag leest u uw favoriete architectuurtijdschrift in een compleet vernieuwde grafische vorm. Met grote dank aan René Tichelaar en het team van de Ronners. Dit is geen nummer over circulariteit of circulaire architectuur, zoals de titel misschien doet vermoeden. Nee, net niet. We gaan voorbij aan die geestige woordspeling, we nemen het letterlijk. We tonen een intrigerende verzameling van gebouwde en bedachte cirkels. Ronde gebouwen dus, zoals bibliotheken, scholen, welzijns- en zorgvoorzieningen, die teruggrijpen naar de cirkel in een streven naar overzichtelijkheid, maar ook naar verbinding en samenhorigheid.
C'est dans ce contexte que nous avons voulu inviter Muoto, signifiant forme en finnois, dont le portfolio comprend plusieurs projets intégrant un cercle dans leur plan. Vous trouverez l'entretien auquel Muoto a participé en préparation de la conférence de ce soir dans les pages du A+ 311. Ce numéro présente une collection intrigante de cercles imaginés et réalisés, des bâtiments ronds, parmi lesquels le projet que Muoto et TA+LK Architects mènent actuellement pour l'entrée d'un éco-campus à Diepenbeek, ici en Belgique.
In A+ 311 hebben we grondplannen van een groot aantal cirkelvormige gebouwen verzameld. Zo zijn we steeds beter de architectuur van ronde gebouwen gaan begrijpen en merkten we de doorwrochte zoektocht van verschillende architecten naar een juiste organisatie in deze abstracte figuur. Telkens weer dwingen die structuuroefeningen bewondering af, om een sluitende logica te brengen in een figuur die zich daar op het eerste zicht althans niet voor leent. We plaatsen ook enkele kritische noten bij de soms baldadige, monumentale geste van de auteur. Want wanneer formalisme radicaal wordt, ontbreekt een relatie met de context. Toch verdient de zelfstandigheid van de geometrie aandacht en erkenning. Want, en om het met de woorden van auteur Job Floris te zeggen, met een deugdelijk functionerende plattegrond is niets mis. Maar de overtreffende trap is de plattegrond die daarbovenop ook een eigen verhaal weet te vertellen.
Notre cycle de conférences de cette année 2025 est rendu possible grâce à un certain nombre d'organisations que nous tenons à remercier pour leur soutien. Le sponsor de cette conférence, Assa Abloy, nos partenaires structurels, Febelsem, Dieter Imo et Pierre Emard de Wallonie, ainsi que les pouvoirs publics subsidiants de Vlaamse Overheid, la ville de Bruxelles, la région de Bruxelles-Capitale, Urban, ainsi que la Fédération Wallonie-Bruxelles, et bien sûr Bozar pour avoir coproduit cet événement avec A+. Nous vous laissons sans plus tarder avec Gilles Delalex et Yves Moreau et nous vous souhaitons une très bonne conférence.
Bonsoir. Goedenavond. Good evening. We'll do it in English.
English tonight. So thank you so much for the invitation first, and also for suggesting such a strange theme, which is the circle. it's a strange exercise because we hadn't noticed that we were using the circle so much. So it was an occasion to go back, retrospectively on our work, and try to bring together and discuss sometimes very old projects where it's true that we did use the circle many times. So we'll try, since it's a very graphical thing, we'll try to experiment a kind of presentation where we'll try to talk and it's going to be experimental, talk together.
Discussion is not kind of a normal lecture. We're going to discuss together and
the project, some are very old, so old memories will come back. So as a start, well, it's called Story of the Eye. You will see why it's named like this. It's because we realized that the first project we did together, the first installation, was a series of mirror balls in the Seine River. And it was a very visual installation. We were, that's 20 years, more than 20 years ago, and you took the pictures with your wide-angle camera.
It was a theme, the wide angle.
And it was called Fish Eye. Fish Eye, which is the eye of the fish. It's literally the thing that you take out of the fish, but it's also the wide angle, and it says something of the eye being a machine, a visual machine, and also then it turns into the thing that you look at. That you take the eye, instead of looking through the eye, you look at the eye itself. And it's also a certain vision, because the fish eye lens, transform the whole world into a spherical world. It just a geometrical transformation. This famous picture where the eyeball turns into an object itself. So that took us to that it's not even a novel, it's a very short story by Georges Bataille that is called Story of the Eye, Histoire de l'œil. For one reason, it's the adventure of a couple, the narrator and his girlfriend, who it's sort of a sexual adventure, like a path, almost like a road movie going from France to Spain, and they play sexual games. It reaches quite an extreme of violence. It becomes very pornographic. To the point of killing even, and it involves other characters, but I went as far as he could in this kind of novel, and you see through the different illustration through time of this novel, because he didn't publish it under his own name, it was so pornographic, and there was an interesting critique of Roland Barthes, who said the interesting things for us is this is not the story of characters, but this is the story of a figure, the figure of the eye. The main character of the story is not people, but that figure of the round, of the globe, that repeats itself through different objects. First, there was this a plate on the floor with milk, the cat, and that was the cat's dinner, and the girl sits in the plate, and then it goes on, and the eye, this round figure, comes regularly, being the eye itself or the sun, or plenty of round figures. And what Barthes says is that it's a metaphorical story. And he sees two lines actually. There's the two metaphorical lines. There's the figure of the eye that becomes an object, but there's one of the liquids you can imagine in sexual games. But he says the sky as well becomes somehow in Spain like liquid, and you have these two metaphorical lines, the eyeball and the liquids that intermingle within the story. So that's a very visual narrative, and that kind of takes us a bit to our own story, which is quite friendly story, and because we usually confronted with the fact that we use grids, that kind of rational figure of the grid, but also it's true the figure of the circle, and we've tried to select quite a number of projects where the two figures, the grid and the round, come together and take different roles, but as characters. So in the novels, you see here at the one point, the torero it's actually a real story where in Spain, within the story of the eye, the torero gets his eyeball. The eyeball is taken out from the bull, and he dies, and he makes it part of the story. And this is a famous story. And even the scene occurs in an arena, which is even a wider circle that takes us a bit into architecture. But you see that the ball existing on different scales, even the scales of architecture. So we went back to Sol LeWitt, which is a regular reference. We know it's a major reference in visual art for us.
Because he worked a lot with the grid.
So
it came quite obvious that it was
so
the starting
we
point.
often came back to his writing and some of his work. He did these two books, difficult to find, 77, 82 books. One is photo grids, and another one is autobiography. And it's funny, we thought it's funny how he himself, who's known for the gridded structures, and here you see that he uses rounds, circles within a square frame, even a grid within a grid, and the figure of transparent roofs and windows. And this is the autobiography also, where he does pretty much the same, but with usual objects that he finds in his own world. And you see that the round comes regularly within the grid, like an element within the grid. So the grid is pretty much the framework. It's not the things that you look at, but it's the framework that stages the round, like in games. We were thinking especially of kids' games, where the grid sort of defines the universe of the kids. That's the place where the stages where the action is going to take place. Well, you have plenty of games with grids and rounds within. So I think that's the first relation between the grid and the circle, which sort of we use.
Yeah, we use this figure of the grid, and also the fact that this grid is somehow cut by the boundaries. I mean, the boundary can be a circle, it can be the site given. And this is a project we did in the south of France, in Montpellier. And it's one of these projects that somehow came before there was really an urban context. So it was like kind of first stone in the whole neighborhood. And so we played with this grid, cut it, and actually the most intense moments of the project are maybe where the grid is touching the site limits, because there you have the accidents, you have some chaotic moments that you couldn't really design actually. And inside this huge grid, well, we have a certain number of places, moments, where it's kind of a circular meeting room, which is kind of a covered box placed in one of the courtyards in this project. So it's really like playing with this circle inside the grid, and seeing how this grid can extend to kind of a bigger circle, kind of a bigger limit. And there you see the circle placed inside one of these atriums. So when we try to develop this notion of the circle and can you maybe just go on?
Okay.
It's really this confrontation between the grid and the circle, and we tried on several occasions to develop this notion, and this is a project we did a few years back, around 2010, something like that, in Laval. Laval is a bit on the, I mean, it's 200 kilometers west of Paris. And in Laval, they had a really famous festival about virtual reality. And so the project was to develop a city for virtual reality. And the site that was given, I mean, it was just like a field. It was an old military field where they were, exercising with guns or shooting. And so there was nothing really we could attach to it, not a kind of a clear context or where we could kind of start a relation. So we had to develop this city, Cité de la Réalité Virtuelle, inside this green landscape. We had hardly a roundabout on the site and maybe a commercial center and a few housing. So we decided to say, okay, if we have to start a city, I mean, we have to start somewhere. So we said, okay, let's draw a circle and let's regroup all the functions inside this circle and then place it there on the city. So it creates this kind of patchwork, kind of a city patchwork inside this 100-meter circle. And there we placed, of course, the program that was given for the competition. I mean, it was meeting rooms, exhibition spaces, offices, 3D special virtual reality rooms. And then we somehow suggested that we could extend this program for the competition with another program that was somehow suggested on the site for an arena. So we created kind of a new city with these activities of research, but also of leisure with the sport arena to create this kind of a big, kind of a small city.
That was, I mean, that was our first for us big competition. So that was a bold move to say, okay, you have a 3,000-seat stadium situated somewhere, so you should put it back together. So it was pretty much like an urban position to say, instead of doing two medium-sized building, you should rather do like one major infrastructure that is going to be more lively, that can be active 24.
To recreate an intensity on the site where is almost nothing. So we needed a kind of a density. And on this image you see on the left side you see the city center, the historical city center of Laval, and on the right side you have our plan. And you see there is a kind of a structure of streets, small passage, places that you can see on both of the existing historical extract of this 100-meter circle, and in our proposal, where there is a real, somehow a bit chaotic spaces, but it's well organized according to larger streets, smaller streets, and yeah, it says something about the circle. I mean, what's
it's the limit, huh?
Yeah, what's inside and what's outside. So there was really this, this kid playing and drawing this circle on the ground and say, okay, here is the space I'm going to develop the project, and here is the space I'm going to play.
So this is from Ungers, City Metaphors, and the grid there plays the role of the urban fabric. Basically, we drew the circle around a new urban fabric of streets. Basically, we could compare it to a pizza. I said, well, we thought, it's like a pizza. You can put any program on there, but you have the limit of it. So pretty much like a dish. As well, you see the two complementary.
Yes, well, that was before they decided not to do the the arena on that location. So we had only half of the pizza in a way, but we suggested that the other half could be used as an extension for this virtual reality center.
This was the idea. The idea later became that of an incomplete project, that calling for a further expansion, and I think from there we later imagined buildings that would not be finished but could evolve in time. That was probably the first time we said it's okay if it's not finished, because the building may have different lives. So that's pretty much the diagram and the reference we had at the time of a circle sort of being a limit that brings things together and defines what is inside the city and outside the city. So it's like more like a fortress, like city walls. The circle plays that theme. Also, we had in mind, because of the theme of the program, we had in mind quite sci-fi references, like old school sci-fi aesthetics that we thought we could use regarding the materiality. This is the Death Star in Star Wars. We thought, was pretty much a little joke in regard to the 3D technologies that they would develop within these projects. One particularity, that there was a main street dividing the two programs. This is where cars would go through. This is actually a real street and pedestrian, in an old-fashioned, also modernist way, people walking on top, above the cars.
Yeah, we developed. I mean, we went quite far into the project before it was
It
cancelled.
almost got built, huh?
Yes, because
Nearly.
I mean there was a political change, and the new mayor wanted something else.
Didn't like it.
He made a kind of a wavy thing arena. That was okay. But so we went quite far into the development of the project and tried to see how we could give qualities and specificities to these streets that we created. They were all somehow a bit too large to be a normal corridor, because we said, oh, maybe we could just expand them a little bit, and maybe this circulation space can become a space in itself and can have extra functions inside this larger corridors. I mean, I don't know if you see on the screen, we put it like a small dashed line on the floor, and that say, okay, the corridor is that, but you could maybe somehow extend a function, kind of a
you could put sofas. We thought the corridors themselves would be appropriable, but the young population working in high-tech technologies. So that was the model just before.
And you see, it is somehow quite chaotic, but it's still organized. But yeah, I mean, all these interesting moments in this quite a 3D space, because you have to think this building as a 3-level project with big rooms where you have this kind of virtual reality projection screens.
So we spent a lot of work trying to solve the question of how this frames the streets. What happens when the streets bump into the circle, and that creates quite a different situation, usually with terraces, views towards the outside, because it's a very introverted program, as you can imagine, with lots of screenings and machines that heat actually used to heat the whole building.
Yeah, now we're in Belgium. It's our only Belgian project. It's in Diepenbeek. It's close to Hasselt, and probably you know. It's a university campus of Hasselt, and yeah, it was a quite interesting. There had been a lot of urban plans, and the last one was with Liszt, a French office as well, where the idea was to get rid of the cars somehow of the campus. So they say we get rid of the cars, so we have to make a new entrance to the campus, and we have to make a kind of a sign with, you know, it's a gate building, and it's also a parking building, because they want to get rid of the cars, and then you take the tram to go to the site, to the halls.
So basically, with TAB, which we're working on at the moment, we thought, if you want to get rid of the cars, then you may think of a square, like literally a square as a shape, as an urban square, where all flows of pedestrian, bicycle, tramways, and cars can, I don't know in English, cohabit, can come together, just like in a city center, and without having to draw every line. We thought, okay, there can be spaces where you don't have sidewalks and plenty of urban furniture that you don't use, but that would be a slow space, and that was the starting point, that big square. And within that square, we thought that we would have 3 round buildings that would sort of eat a little bit, no, the square, and where we could develop a tower for offices, laboratories,
yes,
students' actions, a car park,
conference center. So it's a tower. I mean, it's also round because there was an idea of having this somehow 360-degree view on the site, because they will invite all of the. It's not just for students; it's also for researchers. So it was like a moment where you could rise up and see the whole campus as a gate. And yeah, these drawings of flipper tables. I mean, it's this kind of well, almost analogy between what we had between the parking building, the tower, and the third building, and then the flow of cars, people, and public transport, and all of them kind of bumping into each other, and creating something kind of exciting between these buildings.
So it was the idea of the circle this time came pretty much in relations to the movements of the flows that wouldn't occur because they have, you know, one road, but because the idea was that the 3 buildings would sort of redirect the flows quite naturally, and not thanks to the lines on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, here you see some of the study models, and yeah, this tower, it's a bit, it's quite specific, because of course, I mean, it is round, and then it's a question, how do you organize a round tower, which shouldn't look round. I mean, it is round, but it shouldn't look just like a closed round building.
A cylinder is not
a
just
cylinder.
one cylinder.
So we said maybe we could, instead of having like a normal tower building with a core in the middle, we could maybe explode all the vertical cores, the structures, into a series of vertical elements that kind of reorganize the whole floor space, in order to create a quite large open space in the middle, because there was a need for flexibility, and having a core in the middle would just allow us to have a very narrow space around the core. So we said, if we explode the core, then we can have this space in the middle, where we can have a laboratoire, we can have a conference center, we can have meeting rooms, classrooms. So that's why we played with these different cores that have different materialities. We have ventilation, we have circulation, staircases, lifts, we have also structures, also some spaces that are not completely defined, kind of this small half circle, kind
like
of small.
We thought it was could be a phone booth.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of this accumulation of very small spaces, and so it's a building almost without facade. It's just this series of vertical elements that are just intersecting these very thin floors, and so it creates this kind of building that I mean, you maybe don't really understand that it's always different from depending on where you look it from, and that at the same time creates the view on the whole landscape of the campus. Yes, and then so we did the tower, and then next to the tower, I told you about the parking. So we developed a parking building for 400-500 cars, organized in the shape of a circle as well, but it's more like a donut because the center is empty. And so there is a series of ramps that go up in the middle and that kind of connect all of the floors. It's a chambord style where you have one ramp going up, one ramp going down, and then they mix each other, and then so you can reach all of the levels.
So the figures, the donuts this time.
A donut, yes. After the pizza, we have a donut.
So that's another project we did with the Yoda architects from Lille. We were in a site next to Euralille along the ring road. And it was quite an extended program. I don't really remember the square meters. And what Yoda did, they made an analysis of the ring road activities of the different places. It's quite close to OMA's egg Congrexpo building. And we did try quite a number of urban configuration with streets and everything. And it seemed really odd recreating, more or less traditional city next to the ring road, because maybe a third of this new district would face road traffic, and it didn't make much sense in the end. And we realized that, that circle shape could bring an intense density, so that we didn't have to use the whole thing, but we could do another object that would make more sense to be positioned next to a ring road, just as Congrexpo. Another most of the projects we show here are quite introverted project. It makes a utopian link. I think the globe is very utopian figure. So here we imagined, the idea was to imagine that we would have a series of connected building programs next to each other, mitoyen, I don't know in English how we say mitoyen, but next to each other, and take that big slab and turn it on itself to have this sort of Coliseum kind of figure where the diversity would come not from the plan but from the section. You see, it's like an UFO in the city. We took this theme of bigness again to show the presence of this building within the city, far away. So that's the section which is the Coliseum kind of section. As the building gets wider and wider to the bottom and thinner at the top, simply for a question of light and kind of staging also of the activity, because you tend to look naturally to the center, whereas the building says little. Just we thought of small variations in the facade from the outside. So here the figure is pretty much that of the Coliseum, the very big building that is a stage design structure. So you see the series of plan. Of course, the graphical quality, appearance of the plan is very important, as it shows the clarity or not of the project. That's a little.
It's a model.
Conceptual model. We wanted to represent actually the void within this Coliseum and the way it was shaped.
Yeah. So this is the void. Party.
Well, how much time do we have?
20 minutes.
20 minutes? Oh, sorry, we went very fast. We're super fast. Okay, this is the last project. So the last project we did was for the Venice Biennale 2 years ago. The theme we chose was the party. The idea was to say, within this feeling of crisis that we know today, was to say, if you want to get out of this crisis, we need to plan ahead again, and we have to learn how to be utopian. So the idea is not to provide a new utopian vision, because we don't have any idea of the future anyway, but to provide the conditions to think long-term again. And the party is not, this is not after the end of the party, but in our mind it was pretty much how to prepare the party, how to prepare the next thing. But the end and the beginning are usually pretty much the same, because once you end the party, you may tend to think of the next one. So the figure was that of a globe that refers both to the terrestrial globe, the planet, but the disco ball, of course, from the 80s, which we could imagine as the last moment where, partying was okay, was accepted. So we thought we would do an utopian theater, a place that would be used every month, that would be given to, oops, sorry, microphone falling down, that would be given to a group of artists or researchers that would just appropriate the structure and enact what could be the base of a different society. So that this was how we dealt with the question of utopia. So that was, of course, this sphere was cut in two ways. It was cut from the top and cut vertically. So it's pretty much a figure that has been made. It's like a dome that has been made vertical, and then that becomes a theater. We did it with Gilles, who is an architect, but also a stage designer, has this sense of staging activity, and also worked on post-Soviet Union architectures, and the way architecture can become a propaganda. But here we wanted to blur the meaning of the shape, since, of course, the sphere refers to architectures of the revolution, like Boulez, but also refers to the disco ball, and you may wonder whether it's one or another. We were thinking also of building maybe as a handmade theater of the kind of spaceship you do in your own backyard, playing with this kind of high-tech, low-tech confusion, bit, the kind of sci-fi imaginary we used for Laval, but having to do it with a low budget within the French pavilion. So
that's why you only have half of the sphere, also. No?
Yeah,
because of the budget.
Much cheaper.
But it maybe was better like that, because it made it more interesting, and that you when you enter you imagine it like a full sphere, but once you turn behind it, you understand, you feel like there is a complete other world there.
So we did a research on a formal research on the spheres, on its occurrence within architecture and visual arts, particularly also on sound architecture. That was a main theme, because the overall installation had sensors, microphones, so you could hear the sounds of the previous activities. So
there was a microphone, so there was a button, so you could press on the microphone and you could record your voice, and then there was a kind of a very sophisticated program that somehow mixed the voices that you recorded with other sounds, and so it's like all of these objects starting to talk to each other and started to communicate. So there was a whole series of speakers, I mean bass, frequency, high speakers, very directed speakers. And so it was a big question, because if you make a theater inside the pavilion, okay, it should be activated. So that's why we said, okay, 1 week per month for the 6 months of the Biennale, they were going to be activated. But what's going to happen the other 3 weeks? So this relation with the sound was interesting.
This one is one of the first versions where the theater was just looking upward, but we thought vertical would allow it to exist even though it's empty, because the echo of the past events. So it's pretty much a work on a section, and we used also, we made it in steel because it could be assembled and deassembled. I think the fact that we wouldn't turn the whole thing, I mean, there was a question whether we would make the pavilion a theater, transform the pavilion into a theater, or whether we should bring in a theater. We thought bringing in the theater was interesting because it could mean that it was temporary, then it could go somewhere else. The fact that it's temporary was quite interesting for us. We thought it would be like a Noah's Ark, like a place where you would put a community and you would send it to outer space.
A spaceship that's landed there. I mean, you don't know how it fitted and how it can leave again. But
you would imagine where is the question? Has it just landed, or is it gonna go? Which is a almost philosophical questions about ecology. Latour used to say he died just before. It's too bad. We would have been so happy to have him, but he was saying we need to land again, and Sloterdijk would say, "Oh, we need to take some distance. We have to look at the Earth from a distance." And the thing is that all around, we imagine lots of little objects all around, which is sort of way of inhabiting the sphere. We use with found objects that we
around Venice.
Yeah,
he took his van and then he went around Venice for 3 weeks collecting objects, and then we somehow created them, transformed them, kind of welded some of them together to create this kind of
the different objects. Structures that sort of help inhabiting the 3 extra rooms around the main one. So it's sort of a second-hand like architecture, but doesn't look like it because it's treated as architecture itself. These are part of the different events that took place. This, dense sound experimentation was quite interesting. There you see the different objects around that were sort of transformed, notably around the idea that they had to hold the different speakers.
And the sphere is actually made out of this blade, kind of water-colored blades, and it was made by some guys in Venice. They had their workshop 300 meters away. So we really took somehow the knowledge of this industry that was in Venice to create the sphere and place it there in the French pavilion.
We had six events. So the experience is you enter, you get behind the ball, and then you discover. Then the stage itself and the different objects that they emit sounds. Each of them has a specific sound. They're all connected.
Yeah, all connected with these wire cables that you see there. They were really somehow also, part of the design, because you have to connect these speakers all together.
And the last occurrence, we have two other, hopefully coming soon. We moved the sphere to Leipzig in eastern Germany, in a factory where they have a festival, an art festival, and there the conditions were quite different because we were outdoor, and you see of course the game was to make a reference. You see the strange architecture, which is actually the last Niemeyer building, the really last one, which is the restaurant of the factory. So there was this idea of staging the ball in relation, like the two moons. We are thinking of Dune, the movie where you have the two moons. And since we were outside, the interesting things, we'll see for the next occurrences, the next occasion, we'll use them. The idea is to transform the sphere and give it a different meaning. So here we had this kind of French-German old tradition, and the factory, they raised the flags, the French-German flags, like the old companionship. And so since we were outside, the problem we had was the wind, because the wind has to go through, so we couldn't use the previous envelope, the skin. So the thing is, here we used little flags, each little blue square is a piece of textile that lifts itself as the wind blows, and that makes it even more a temporary installation without the idea of. That's quite different imaginary, because it's mostly made for concerts at night. But also it made it you can see it on the pictures, but made it an architecture that sort of moves really as there's a lot of wind there, and you could see the flag moving all the time, and the architecture sort of vibrating. So the first concert was given by Dominique Gonzalez Fosters, who it became more like a concert place. The next occurrences, the next displays of the ball will be more on the themes, more focused themes of the party, the political aspect of what does it mean to party, in free parties, in derelict disco buildings, and the next one will be in Würzburg, will deal mostly with the theme of Utopia itself. So it will probably come back much closer to its initial configuration.
Yeah, even if we want to readapt it somehow, but the director of the museum, he wants somehow the same. And we want to try to. No, we use it as a found object, so we need to interact with something, and so in Venice, it was the first version, the spaceship, the disco ball, and
so the ball is still rolling at the moment.
Yes, so we will see. So maybe one day we'll come to Brussels,
hopefully.
So we have to find a good idea.
So I think we're done. No?
Yeah, that was the circle and the grid.
The circle and the grid.
The circle meeting the grid, or the grid meeting the circle.
So thank you for your attention, and
thank you.